Cans it up, the Penguins were changing. They're able to come out relatively easy. Here's Keith Primo with it first. Primo cuts the inside, scores! There it is! Keith Primo! The much maligned center of the Philadelphia Flyers wins this game in the fifth overtime.
The fourthperiod.com presents the O&B Puckcast. Yes, we've reached episode 62, and everything's just peaches and cream for the Flyers. And I'm your host, Isaiah. And, wow, what to say about this hockey team. Yeah, we're going to have a stacked show for you tonight. And we're going to have a special guest, Russ Cohen from sportsology.com. It's back. He's going to talk about the Flyers, prospects. That'll be coming along directly. But first, let's introduce our panel. I'm going to go right to Dan of Brotherly Pod, Brotherly Puck, National Pod, National Puck. And Dan, I know you have a dilemma because as the host of the Angry and Negative show, I don't think either one of those really apply right now with our Philadelphia Flyers.
Yeah, it's getting harder to live up to the gimmick. The Flyers are, for the first time in a decade, providing us reasons to be happy and joyful. So we may have to rename the show in the near future.
Yes, may I suggest peaches and cream. But anyway, yes, I'm also here with my partner, Chef B. How are you, man?
Good, man. Looking forward to welcoming all the Eagles fans and Sixers fans over to Flyers world because they seem like they're the only game in town right now.
Ooh, yeah, that's something we got to talk about at some point, maybe tonight if we get to it. There's so much to cover. But yeah, we're getting Anthony from the fourthperiod.com. Anthony DeMarco, how are you, man?
Not too bad. How are you guys doing down there in Philly?
We're doing well. Except the football fans are not doing well. And I think the Eagles essentially checked out yesterday. And I think some of the fans that have been more casual in the past are going to be paying attention to the Flyers, where it used to be, Chef, we were talking about this earlier today, like they would wait till like February and March.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's funny, like, I brought it up that there were fans that didn't even want to pay attention before because, one, a lot of my friends were, like you said, fringe hockey players. They loved the hockey playoffs, but there was no real reason for them to pay attention till then. I think the Eagles are just speeding up that process.
Yeah, and speaking of the process, the Sixers have a nice team, and they're like not really playing that great. And this is not a Sixers podcast, but let's just say the most exciting team in town right now is the Philadelphia Flyers. And Dan, we want to present a stats pack for our listeners, maybe some people who are catching up with the Flyers for the first time this year. So what do you have for us?
Well, they've played 27 games. They are 15-7-5, good enough for 35 points. They sit third in the Metro and fourth in the Eastern Conference, 2 points ahead of Carolina and 6 points ahead of the New York Rangers, Buffalo Sabres for the last playoff spot. They are 15th in goals for, 6th in goals against. The power play is ranked 12 at 19.8%, and the penalty kill is ranked 3rd, believe it or not, at 85.9%.
That's these are some really good numbers, and the Flyers went 10-2-4 in November, taking 24 out of a possible 32 points, and since our last show, the Flyers have gone 5-1-1. Since our last show, the Flyers were wrapping up a 5-2 loss, a horrible game to the Panthers. It was a shooting gallery. It was their 4th loss in a row. Anthony, that was a tough game. Carter Hart got pulled. Who would have thought that was like the last time the Flyers really looked like not such a great team?
Yeah, and it seems like this team has responded well to brutal losses because, we just talked about the month of November when they went 10-2-4, and that record is directly following the 7-1 beatdown from the Pittsburgh Penguins. And, I'm guilty of this too, that following that loss to the Penguins and even to the Panthers, where I said, and I brought it up, the leadership really has to, take a step forward here. And maybe it's Alain Vigneault and the coaching staff more than anything else, but it's a real testament to this team that after every big loss, or the first two big losses early in the season, they've really rallied around it and taken it as kind of like a kick in the ass, for lack of better terms, and started a good stretch of hockey directly following that bad loss.
Yeah, absolutely. And Dan, they come back. They get off to a rocky start with Brian Elliott letting in some squeegee goals, but they rally. They come back. They win in Carolina 5-3, and it was really coming off that Panthers game. A great effort by the team, and of course, they needed Elliott to really play well, and he made clutch saves. And those are the types of things they weren't getting when they were in a little bit of a bad streak.
Yeah, Elliott has been surprisingly decent this year. I was more concerned about his health than I was his overall play going into the season. And, he looks just fine right now. He looks, playing not like he's 34. He's playing more, like 5 years younger than that. He looks great for the most part. And he's definitely been giving this team a chance to win when Carter Hart is not taking the crease every night.
Yeah. And in November, Carter Hart had a 1.94 goals against, 927 save percentage. Elliott was 2.38 goals against and .926. So, Chef, that's a real improvement. I mean, Carter Hart still has to work on what's going on. He's under 900 for save percentage on the road. But, at this point, that could just be an anomaly. He just could have been working into the season. Right now, the Flyers goaltending is doing the job, and it's a real pleasure so far.
Yeah, it's been awesome to watch. I mean, if you would have told me that the highlight the last couple of games would be Elliott stoning on a big old toe save and then reaching across, I'd have thought, what, you meant to say Hart, right? So it's a happy surprise, and I'm good. There's only one real thing that concerns me about the goalies right now, and I think, and actually, it's actually both of them. In the middle, they seem to be leaving a big rebound to come out right in the middle of center of the ice. So it might be just maybe the pads, they're trying to direct stuff away to the boards, and it's just a misfire. But it happened more than a couple times for me to notice. But overall, that's just nitpicking for me right now. They're playing great, and I'm more than happy to enjoy it.
Yeah. They're not perfect. They're a work in progress. And Anthony, a lot of that is because it's still, a very small sample size of games under a different coach. So they took a step back at home versus the Flames, a game they really should have won. They had a desperate Calgary team on the ropes. They let them back in and lost that game in a shootout. So that was tough. They definitely dominated that team, but then they come back against the Canucks and they played a really clean game. It was very well played for both teams, but the Flyers carried play, and if it wasn't for Jakob Markstrom, I think it was Markstrom in net, was it not? Or was it Demko that night?
It was Demko.
Oh, it was Demko, okay. Really good young goaltender. But the Flyers pulled that one out 2-1. So coming out of that, the Flyers still were on somewhat of a point streak after that tough loss to the Panthers.
Yeah, it wasn't always clean. Obviously the Calgary game was a letdown. I think Vancouver was a very, to your point, a very good, clean game. But it was a dreadful game to sit through, at least for the first half of it. Their first period was just very, lackluster, lacked energy. But, I think the Flyers in the last recent stretch, and I would say more the last two games, where they put their foot on the throat of the Detroit Red Wings and they made a statement, and I thought it was a really important game that they not only beat the Red Wings, but assert themselves as a more dominant team. And then, against the Montreal Canadiens, I thought they had a pretty good game as well. So I like that you've seen more like dominance from the Flyers in the last couple games. Like obviously under Michel Therrien and Alain Vigneault's like more defensive system, they tend to sit back on their leads. But we haven't seen that in years past. Like when they defend the leads late in games and whatnot, they did against the Columbus Blue Jackets. So I think that it's a team that's coming into its own now, slowly but surely cleaning up the game and whatnot. And we really haven't seen a sloppy performance from them since that shootout loss to the Calgary Flames.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I mean, they hung on a little bit after the Canucks game in Columbus. They won that game essentially because Brian Elliott stole it, Dan. But, I mean, I'll take it because they won in regulation. And also, they hadn't won in Columbus since, 2005 or something like that?
Yeah, I think it was 2005. It was one of those games that we've seen a lot from the Flyers this season, where, they're playing some close hockey right now. There have been very few games where they really made a statement. And, if they're going to get the W, it's fine. But it was one of those games where they did kind of morph back into the resting on their defense to kind of protect the lead there. But for the most part, again, a W is a W right now. And the Flyers, the system is there. And, they looked really good in that game, and Elliott has done, again, a great job at keeping them involved.
Yeah. One of the big strengths you mentioned in the stats pack earlier, but when Dan was talking about Chef, the PK is third at 85.9%. A little interesting tidbit from Charlie O'Connor's column today. The Flyers are allowing less shots on goal if you extrapolated their PK than the Chicago Blackhawks are 5-on-5. So that they're really, it's excellent. And I guess Mike Yeo deserves a lot of credit for that.
Wow, yeah. I mean, the one, when people were complaining about the team before this run, and there wasn't a lot of tangibles you could take away, but one of the things you could take away and you could kind of like show it was how well the PK got this year. I mean, at the beginning of the season when they were, losing games kept going to shootouts or overtimes or whatever, you couldn't see as much of how they improved. But now, third in the league, I mean, it's a pretty huge turnaround. And I think Yo deserves a lot of credit too. And I think more so than anything, Fletcher gets a little credit too, because he went out and got the people that he thought, a lot of people aren't hung up on Braun. I like Braun, and as Anthony pointed out, this team defense is better. He might not be the fastest guy around now or whatever, but whatever system he's playing with Yo, it seems to work. And I think overall, whatever system they're playing with, with this team, it's working. So a lot to be happy about right now.
Yeah, absolutely. And the thing was, in the Columbus game, Joel Farabee was kind of trending down a little bit. Check that a couple of days. It was a couple of games before that, but you have to give Farabee credit in the Flames game to get Hayes set up from behind the net, and then he made a great pass in the Columbus game to Lawton that Lawton was able to tip in, and Scott Lawton's really been playing well, and that was his return has kind of sparked that line. And Dan, we see in the Montreal game after that shellacking that the Flyers laid on Detroit. Again, it looks like Kevin Hayes is getting on track now that Scott Lawton is there, and Farabee has picked up his game. He made a really nice play recognizing a zone exit that Montreal was trying to execute, and he gets a pass over to Hayes that eventually ends up in a goal that was pretty critical in the Flyers' win in Montreal.
Yeah, Farabee seems to be making a lot of crisp passes lately. He kind of burst onto the scene, House of Fire, and then cooled off considerably for most of the recent month there. But he's been looking great lately. Lawton, I mean, who knew that he was the missing link to the Flyers offense this season? But he's done good since he comes back. Kevin Hayes finally picking it up. He's got, 2 goals in his last 2 games. He's got 4 in his last 6. So the offense finally coming from him after he didn't score for much of November. So it's finally good to see that, their quote-unquote depth players are starting to carry some load offensively, because they really need to start finding scoring from anybody at this point.
Yeah, JVR, he even got one, but he's still kind of struggling, but he even got one versus Detroit in garbage time. But we'll see how that augurs for him. So I just wanted to mention some of these analytical sites that Anthony talk about the Flyers' playoff chances right now. And HockeyViz.com had them at 79%. And I think Dom Lucijan from The Athletic had them around 65%. And it's really important because you look at in the past what's been happening. In 18-19, the Flyers were in last place with a 9-10-2 record. In 18, they were in last place with an 8-9-5 mark. And it really makes a difference this year. They don't have to chase after points after putting themselves in a hole.
Yeah, big difference, because it seemed like the Flyers, even under Dave Haxtell, they would always go on some crazy run in January. It always seemed that around like mid to late January to early February, they went on some crazy run. And they did it last year, but they were just too far behind the eight ball. They did it in 17-18. They had that crazy run in February, like I just mentioned. But while they have maintained a great record to this point, and they're in a great spot, and for once they're not chasing, it's important to, keep the pedal on the metal here and keep it going. Like I remember in 16-17, when the Flyers weren't situated this well, but they were still comfortably in a playoff spot. And then I believe they had that 10-game winning streak that spilled into mid-December, then completely fell off a cliff after the holidays. So it's great to see. I don't think anything like that is on the horizon for this team. I think Alain Vigneault really has these guys working hard and has instilled a system that is just like a well-oiled machine right now. But it is important to just maintain a solid pace and point percentage. Obviously, they're not going to go 10-2-4 over every 16-game stretch, but they've set themselves up quite nicely here that if they do go on a 2 or 3 game losing streak, it isn't the end of the world.
Yeah, absolutely. And Chef, we can't just gloss over the Montreal game. We have to talk about Ivan Provorov making just the play of the year in overtime, taking the initiative from his end of the ice, getting over the blue line with speed, and using that open ice area, identifying that there was a forward that would have to guard him, and then making a great move, stick handling around. I think it was Max Domi, I believe, and getting right in on the goaltender and getting that critical goal. And it's two things come out of that. It looks like the Provi from 18 has reemerged, and who gets credit for that?
Well, that's a really good question, because is it because he's played with Niski? Is it the coaching? I think it's a little bit of both, and I think I'm going to go out there too. You never really heal as fast as you think you heal. So I think like all last year, when you're still using your equipment, that meaning your body, the way you are, you're still playing a huge grind. I just literally think it's a combination of everything. I think he feels really good. I think he's got a good defensive partner, a veteran that he can learn from. And I think it's the coaching. And I think it's his system, too. I think it's a factor of everything. And I'm so glad because I have him on my fantasy team. He keeps giving me much-needed points right at the end to push me over the top. I love it.
Well, that's the real important information here. That just, we'll get that out on an alert right away. But, Dan, you got to talk a little bit more about Provorov, because you look at Niskanen, and that didn't work out right away in training camp. But eventually, they have, in my opinion anyway, given the Flyers their best first pair since like the Pronger days.
They have been a well-oiled machine lately, and you're probably right. I don't think there's been a top defense pair on this team quite like those two probably since Pronger was here. And, it's good to see. There wasn't the chemistry right away, and, it's kind of worrisome there, but Provorov's looked great, and Matt Niskanen has been a huge addition to the team. I know there were a lot of people that weren't happy over the summer when they first traded for him, but, he's been so much bigger of a piece to this team than Radko Gudas ever was, and, they formed a lethal unit. And if they keep playing as good as they are, or if they even get better as a pair, I mean, that is a serious threat they have on their blue line right now.
Yeah, I don't think there's any question. And just taking that to another step, Anthony, just, you know, you look at Niskanen and the effect he's had. You also have to take a look at a guy who struggled in Justin Braun. Really had a tough time finding a place outside the PK. He wasn't very effective. We talked about it. Then they put him with Travis Sanheim, and now it looks like the Flyers have a top four that's set, and it looks like the bottom pair is just going to rotate until guys win jobs as they're being held accountable by Alain Vigneault.
Well, the thing is that you could make a case, and you and Dan just touched on it, that the Flyers haven't had as good a top pair or top four since the days of Pronger and Tiemann and Carl and Coburn.
Right.
But I would argue that this version of the defense is deeper. Because back then the Flyers had, you know, a putrid third pair, whether it be Lucas Krajcek or Ryan Perrin or Oscar Spartulis. Now you have guys like Gossesbeer and Hag and Myers rotating in and out, which any one of the three, maybe aside from a poor side of Gossesbeer, is a luxury to have on a third pair at this point. As for Braun, I liked what he brought to the table. I tracked him a lot in San Jose. He was kind of just a guy to eat hard minutes for the likes of Burns and Carlson last year. I think he suffered a bit early in the season, playing above his head when he was first paired with Ivan Provorov.
Yeah.
Then he got sent down to the third pair with Shane Gossesbeer, who's just really been a roller coaster, mostly on the negative side of things. But he's now settled in next to Travis Sanheim. Sanheim's been much better than he was in October. I think Braun has benefited from that, and I think vice versa as well. I think Sanheim has been really able to settle his game down with a vet like Braun. So, you know, this top four has really has been a real breath of fresh air for a Flyers team that hasn't had one of these since before the 2013 lockout.
Right. Yeah. It's it definitely. I mean, I'm sorry if we have upset any Oscars Bartulis fan, but
I'm kind of offended. Not gonna lie.
Yeah, I was waiting for you to speak up for him. You like the obscure defenseman.
He's got a jersey. Who are you kidding?
Yeah, that's it. That's right. You put all your jerseys that you had. And somebody was asking you, how come you don't have one guy or another guy? But yeah, the Flyers. It's just their fourth 10-win month in the last decade, and it's been a lot of mediocrity, and it's. We'll see what happens going forward. There's one area for concern. It's the slow starts. And I think they got to clean that up, because when they play better teams or when it's crunch time and when teams start playing better in February, that's where the rubber is going to meet the road. They're not going to be able to get away with those. So that's a cautionary tale. I think Hart on the road will kind of work its way out as he kind of accepted his responsibility. I think just a quick panel vote here. I think AV is definitely going to make a move to push Hart into that 50-game range. Anybody disagree with that?
No, I think the plan. I think the plan all along was kind of for a 50-32-ish split between the two of them.
Yeah. So I think AV's very smart, very calculating in how he's doing everything. I've noticed he's given Elliott a couple road starts to kind of nail down some points. Elliott can handle some misfortune maybe a little bit better in the very beginning of the season, but he'll slowly build Carter Hart up to that point, and maybe playing some back-to-backs, and just to kind of get him ready for the playoffs and all that, hoping that the Flyers are definitely there. And with that, we are going to take a little break here as Russ Cohen is about to join us. Anthony, you are on assignment from TFP, so you're going to leave us until next show. Where can people follow you before you hit the road?
You can find me at ADeMarco25 on Twitter, and you can find all my work at TFP.
Fantastic. Anthony, thanks for joining us tonight, and we'll catch you next time down the road.
All right. Take it easy, guys.
Yep. Are we joined by Russ Cohen from Sportsology.com?
You are.
Okay, great. Russ, great to have you back. You're on with Isaiah, Dan, and Chef.
Okay.
Fantastic. Well, Russ, what do you think of these these Flyers? They're I mean, I think you and I were kind of in the like doubting Thomas category, perhaps. Like, let's see what they got. I know it's early, but what are your initial impressions about the team? And is this the AV effect in that first year?
Well, we are seeing the AV effect in the first year for sure. He's holding guys accountable, which is good. The goaltending has straightened itself out, although Brian Elliott got a stinger today, and I don't know. One of the Eagles, Jordan Howard, had a stinger, and he still has it, I think. So you never know to what degree a stinger is anymore. We used to think it was just temporary.
Yeah.
So, but I'll go with that. It is, and move on. Things have improved. They improved the lineup a little bit. I still don't know if they're more than a 500 team. Clearly today they are, but I don't know if I don't know if you could hang your hat on, well, if they're in there in the playoff spot in the third, anywhere in the top 3 spots by Thanksgiving, that it's safe. Because this year, a couple weeks ago, overtime games were up 27%. That's a lot.
Right.
And the Flyers have been in a lot of them. And they're one of the lowest teams for regulation wins. And so, to me, that's still a little bit worrisome because I don't know, how's Justin Braun going to look in Game 70? He doesn't look right now. So there's still some things there. They definitely could correct some things at the deadline. I thought they were a bubble team. I still think they're a bubble team.
No, I can definitely see that. I don't like their slow starts. I, too, have concerns about what Niskanen and Braun are going to look like, on February 15th, as opposed to what they look like now. Although I do think Braun is working better with Travis Sanheim than he has with anybody else.
That's fair, yeah. I agree.
So, yeah. So, listen, it's peaches and cream, as we like to call this show tonight, compared to what it's been over the last couple of Novembers. And, of course, this is a team that won 10 in a row, missed the playoffs, lost 10 in a row, made the playoffs. It's like, you don't know what to expect.
That's how this NHL is, though. I mean, Buffalo did it last year. They won 10 in a row, and then they were awful the rest of the year. Like, it just, teams get hot. They had a really good month, but they also did get a lot of loser points. And I am not a big fan of it. You have to get them when you need to get them, don't get me wrong. But lately, they've been losing leads. And that's what's getting them into overtime. When you hemorrhage those points against the wrong teams in your division, that's not great.
Right. And we look at that ROW column and, look out. The Rangers have more ROWs, regulation and overtime wins than the Flyers. And I don't think the Rangers – I think the Rangers are possibly a playoff team, but I think – at the end of the day, they'll be on the outside looking in, but it kind of speaks to the concern that you have.
Yeah, and that's I try and look at it that way, and then there are other issues with the team, like what are they going to do with Joel Farabee? Joel Farabee's used to scoring goals. 2 years ago, he had 48 goals with the combined season of the NCDP. Last year, I don't know, I want to say he had 20-something goals. He's got 2. He had 3 in Lehigh, but at least that was in 4 games.
Right.
He's got 2 in 20-something games.
Right.
9 points. This is not the level that Joel Farabee's used to. Even though he'll be excited and still is excited to be with the NHL team, you can't tell me that he doesn't feel like he's struggling because I still see him hitting posts. And he did that in preseason. So there's just a little something telling me that, he's one of those guys that looks like he can do it, but over a course of 82 games, I don't know. And I would rather see them send him down. Send him down now if you don't want to burn the next level, which is if you go to 33 games, I think it is, then you walk him a year closer to unrestricted free agency. If you remember back in the day, Lucas Biza, I think they stopped at 32 games with him.
Right. Well, that's I saw a dip in his play, but then he picked it back up a little bit. He's made some nice plays, and there will be a decision point, and certainly we're gonna have some questions about when that decision point could come about. Chef, you got the next one for Russ.
Well, you mentioned deep pairings and specifically Braun. Seems like he's benefited better with playing with Sanheim, and actually he's probably benefited a lot better now in this system. I mean, judging with Ghost's status and Myers' status up in the air and how they've been playing erratic lately. Is there anybody else on the defense or on the team for that matter do you think's benefited from this new system under AV?
Well, I think Provorov has. I mean, Provorov and Niskanen, because Niskanen's the role you see Niskanen now is the role that he's worked into because he's no longer a big offensive threat like he used to be. But he still can play defense, and he can play a hard game, and he's tough. He's a tough defender, and he's a good skater. So right now, those are good things for Matt Niskanen. And I say good skater because the Flyers don't have, other than Ghost, Provorov's on the edge. They don't have a great skating defenseman. That's why against some of these teams, most teams that have a really fast guy like Athanasiou, like a Larkin, like Elias Pettersson, they may not all score, but they're all getting a lot of scoring chances a couple times a game with foot speed, with simple foot speed. Anyhow, but getting past that, with Braun, the worrisome part for me is the fact that he has gotten better with Travis Sanheim. Isn't it supposed to work the other way?
Yeah, that is true. That is true.
So
the rookie should be teaching the veteran how to get better.
Right. Hey, if it works as a pairing, that's great. But that's why I'm going to really look to see when and if Braun can really ratchet up his play. I think it's been okay. I think it's been bad at times. I think it's been okay. Gostisbehere, I know they threw him back on the top power play. He had a couple shots on net finally, but he's still lacking confidence. I know he got that turnaround goal, but that's not enough to tell me he's cured. They still have to hold on to him, though. They do, because you don't want to trade him right now based on the fact that, A, you still could have injuries on the blue line. B, you'd rather him going right if you're going to trade him to get more value. So I think you wait right up until the deadline with Gostisbehere and see where his game is at that point. But he's still a great skater and still can move the puck without a lot of turnovers. So there is a value to still having him. I think Myers' play has been pretty good. That's good. At some point, I talked about this on Twitter. Robert Haig, he's played well lately, but I don't know if he has a real role in this defense. And I could see him possibly being moved because I don't know how much he's really in the future plans. Now, everybody's like, well, you need an 8. And my answer is, if you need an 8, if that's what you're worried about, then how good is your blue line? I mean, who worries about their 8? Like, right. They have Walensky and they have Chris Bigra, who have NHL experience in Lehigh. For spot starts and stuff, I mean, that's all you want out of a 7 or an 8. You don't really have to have a guy that is ready to go in there to play 30 games in a row. That's not really why you have those guys. So, because I don't know. I mean, if Gostisbehere is playing well and Myers is playing well, do you need Robert Haig?
I think right now that Myers doesn't quite have AV's trust, and I can see why.
Sure.
I mean, the physical package is about as good as any of their defensemen. I think he's their best pure skater. Maybe not.
I think so too.
Yeah, maybe not laterally. Like Ghost is excellent lateral, but Myers is really good. He's just a chicken without a head. Sometimes he doesn't know when to go. He bombs out on his read sometimes. But I definitely see that Ghost and Myers have more credibility. And then right now with Haig, and Haig seems like an eminently replaceable guy. He might be attractive because he's younger. He's cheap. And they might say, hey, we can go out and get another veteran for $1 million, and maybe meet a need by trading Robert Haig around a trade deadline.
Yeah. And I think he'd be a part of a deal. Obviously, it's not going to be just Robert Haig.
Right.
But I think he could be part of a deal because I just think that I don't think he's AV's kind of defenseman. I think AV's playing him now because he needs to play him right now, and he's trying to teach Myers. But if he wasn't teaching Myers, Haig would still be getting scratched, right?
Yeah, maybe. I don't know. I
mean,
think,
he only played 11 games right up until like 2 weeks ago.
yeah, yeah. I think they had him in there. I'm just looking at 16. They had him. But yeah, but
Yeah.
we're talking about recently. Yeah, so it was like 13, 12. Yeah.
Yeah. So he missed quite a few games.
Yeah, he was out for a while. Yeah, it's just I think they want to train. I think they want Myers to take more hard minutes, and if he proves he can do that, then that could be an exit way for Haig.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, Dan.
Well, the penalty kill has been terrific. It's third in the league right now at 85.9%. Braun has done his best work there. Kevin Hayes has been a huge addition, and I think a lot of credit has to go to Mike Yao for kicking them into shape.
Yeah, Mike Yo definitely gets credit for that. On our Stick to Hockey podcast, we had interviewed him preseason, and I felt very comfortable with him talking about that, knowing what to do. He's an intense guy. I think he's done a great job. I think for the people that were bitching about Kevin Hayes, this is the worth of Kevin Hayes.
Yeah.
That, and then when they decide that they're going to try and spring him on a couple plays a game, that's when he could really be dangerous. I mean, they haven't done that enough. Like he scored a goal like that a couple of games ago. The goal around the slot area where he just wristed it in, that's a good way to get him to score, and that'll happen. But when he gets a little bit of open ice, he's got great moves, and they just haven't gotten him in that situation enough where back in the day the Rangers used to. And I feel like if they do that, they'll get more points out of him. But otherwise, yeah, he's hard to play against, and he plays a real good PK. So I think people are seeing that. If you're going to harp on how many points Kevin Hayes has, it's a dead argument. Nobody was ever thinking Kevin Hayes is going to score 75 points. He's not going to do that, ever.
No. His value, especially in the absence of Nolan Patrick, I mean, he's really been a godsend. It's been frustrating watching him offensively, but you know what? Scott Lawton is really playing well, and maybe if Farabee can hang in there, they might actually have a third line. They might.
I mean, Lawton definitely has come back strong, and that definitely has been a part of this resurgence. Tyler Pitlick's played really well as of late, so that's making Fletcher look good with that move. So those things are going really well, but we'll see going forward just how much of that scoring keeps going, because we've not really seen this team score on all cylinders. Like, we haven't even talked about JVR being a fourth liner.
No. But in spite of that, this is a guy who hasn't even found his groove yet. That he's actually playing fairly well, but it's just not enough to supplant any of the other players right now. I mean, that could change if the young players really fall off, but I don't know if that's necessarily a bad news situation just yet.
No, but when you need goals, if you're not getting them from them, it will be.
Yeah.
In November, early December, it's not the end of the world. In March, that's another story.
No,
so if he doesn't find it by then, it'll be a focal point.
Yeah. No, I could definitely see that. Chef?
Well, you said November, so let's talk about it a little bit. 24 out of 32 points in November. It's great. So it puts them in great shape, but not, they don't have to chase after the points like they have to do so many times before. But there are still areas where they need improvement, like we were talking about earlier, Carter Hart on the road. What others do you think?
The whole team on the road. I mean, for the most part, they've had a couple of good road wins, but not enough to say they're a good road team. They're not a good road team yet. Carter Hart on the road is definitely an issue. Those things could definitely work themselves out. Those are the main issues. And then again, like JVR. JVR is not playing to his capability. He's not. If you want to say he's getting chances, great. You know what? Expected goals, chances, they're all nice. But if they don't go in at the end of the day, we're going to talk about them not going in. And so, those are some of the guys. And to be really frank, if all the centers were in shape, everything was great down the middle, you'd have Giroux on the wing and you'd be scoring more. Because it's definitely sapped his scoring ability. We know that. when he's got to play center now, that does take away.
Is Frost kind of switching with him? Is that what's going on there, or like
Yeah, I mean, but not for the full game, because I saw at times they would switch Frost out on certain shifts, and so, you know, Frost is playing there, but again, he is not lighting it up yet, and so at some point, another 5-7 games down the line, we got to see exactly what he's doing, because again, if you're keeping these guys up just because they're highly skilled, just to keep the flow going, I'm not sure that's good for their development. And so it doesn't matter what I think, though. It's just whatever the team's going to do, the team's going to do. But that's my opinion on it. So right now, Frost got off to a hot start. And lately, he's just been okay.
Yeah. And that leads into our next question, Dan.
Well, you know, you talked about Frost potentially getting sent down. I think a lot of that has to do with Nolan Patrick not here. You know, he's an X factor right now. Whether he'll come back, he'll stay in the lineup if he does come back. You know, how do you think that, you know, affects Frost being sent down, or how he's played thus far?
Well, I think it does affect it. It's part of the equation. And I was asking around, and like Patrick has not even worn the non-contact jersey yet, like the regular jersey yet. He's only worn non-contact. So, you know, there's still this thought that he may not get back this season. Like, there is that chance. And so right now, you know, Chuck Fletcher said the other day on the radio, status quo, but he hasn't really told the press corps that yet. So it doesn't look great right now for Nolan Patrick. I honestly can't be positive about it because, you know, he's not even taking any hits in practice. So right now, that's out of the equation. With that out of the equation, you know, I get why they're using Frost, but again, at some point, if he's not putting up points, where do you stop with that? Where do you stop with that experiment, or at least set him down for a little while, see what he does, see what he could learn down there, let Gordon work with him, because there's not a lot of practice time in the NHL. I mean, it just isn't. I spoke to a great scout who was also a great player, and you know, he talked about how much practice time there used to be in the NHL, where players could go over dumping and chasing. They could go over little parts of their game as a line and by themselves. You can't do that as much now, and so the coach has to make the most of it, and that's why there's not as much teaching going on. So, you know, right now with Frost, you know, he came out of the gate gangbusters. It's leveled off a bit. We'll see what the next, I don't know, how many games is he at? I forget now. 15?
Yeah, Morgan Frost, and looking him up right now. Should be looking at 7 games, 2 goals, 1 assist, 3 points, -3, and averaging about 14 minutes per night.
Right. So you look at him maybe in the next 7. It doesn't matter whether, you know, ELC thing means nothing with him. He's an AHL player.
Right.
But in the next 7, you go, oh, don't worry about that. I'm not trying too hard on that. I didn't even think about you were the guy with that. I didn't.
I like admitting when I was wrong, because it's so rare. You know, I'm only kidding.
No, I get it. But, you know, I think like the next 7 are important for him. Because I do think at the end of the day, he's got to put up some numbers. I don't think you have Morgan Frost there because he's a good line mate.
I agree. NHL is a crappy development league, and just the nature of the schedule alone with the AHL is beneficial for physical and for physical growth and skill development. Yeah. So there's just not enough appreciation because you can't chart it, graph it. It's one of those intangibles, and it always will be an intangible, and that doesn't play into what's popular right now.
No, and every player is different, and right now they're winning, so why should I even be talking about it? But I just feel like there's a little voice inside of me that says I should, and so I do.
Well, sure. No, we asked you about it, and Chef, you have you got some questions about Joel Farabee?
I got a question. I got a question. Why are you named Chef? Are you a chef?
Yeah, I'm a real chef. It's not a gimmick. Everybody has gimmicks on Twitter now, but I really am a chef.
So you know what sous vide is and all that? You really are a chef?
Yep. Yes, I really am a chef.
Yeah, At Steam Pub in Southampton.
Oh, okay. I've never been there, and I'm not a chef. I just cook at home, and I'm not one of these guys that gets crazy like in Top Chef, although I like those shows. But I did go to school for hotel restaurant management. I did the restaurant side first. So I did have some experience, worked in a few places, catering, hula hands, a few other places like that. So I did cook at home. But all right, that's good. That answers that question for me. Thank you.
Well, since you just spoke about Frost and G switching out, I just wanted to touch on that very briefly. It seemed like there was a little confusion the first, I guess, 2 or 3 games he was up when they were switching back and forth. It seemed like they were missing. It seemed like G was picking up the defensive assignments going down ice on defense. Does it seem like that they were mixing up their signals?
I think so, but it's hard for us to tell, right? Because we don't know what the exact game plan is, but it did seem that way. What spoke volumes to me was, and this is probably going back a couple of weeks now, is when one of the games went into overtime, Frost wasn't used. And so AV got asked about that, and he basically said, well, he was on like the 5th grouping, something like that.
Right.
4th or 5th grouping, which again, in an overtime, it's not that long. How many minutes was he really going to play if he was going to get out there at all, right? If you're in the 4th or 5th grouping. Sure. And he said basically he didn't get used because he needed G to take a face-off. So that tells you something right there. Now we'll see if when they get in the next overtime, if he gets out there. I didn't notice the other day. I'll be honest. I don't know if he did get out there in that last one. So I'll have to pay more attention on that. But that's a sign where if Vigneault doesn't want to use him that way yet, then he doesn't fully trust him either, and he's trying to make it easier for him.
Right.
Cool.
Yeah. Russ, I wanted to ask you about what's going on in the New York Metro. Look, we know what the Islanders' deal is. They're on a roll right now. But the Devils and the Rangers seem to be on divergent paths, even though they both have, had big splashes in the offseason. What's your perspective on those clubs and maybe what's going to happen with them as we move forward?
I mean, I don't think the Devils are getting the message anymore from John Hines. I know somebody who's at the game tonight, and they're just not playing. And so I'm surprised John Hines still has a job. I am. After the Ranger game the other day when they got beat up at home physically in a fight, they gave up 2 shorthanded goals. The power play was awful. Like, these are things that are coaching matters. And right now, that's just, it's not mattering that much, or at least it seems that way to us because nothing's happening. Nothing's changing. So tonight, they went with Blake Coleman on the second line because I remember I heard somewhere, because I try and watch a lot of games, and John Hines had challenged him recently, and he had come through with some more points. But that, to me, that's like getting blood out of a stone. But okay, that is a coach's job to challenge guys. He accepted the challenge, whatever. But now you've got Taylor Hall on the third line, and I guess they're trying to get him to spark like Pavel Zacha a little more, who was playing okay, but still could play better. But again, like, all of a sudden I'm using Taylor Hall on the third line. Oh, yeah. I don't know if there's any scenario that makes sense putting him on the third line. Like, I think you got to put Taylor Hall on the top line as long as you have him on your team and let him roll that way. I don't understand why you would even use him on the third line once. It doesn't make any sense to me. And so a lot of what the Devils are doing doesn't make sense to me. That said, Ranger-wise, they're going to have ups and downs because they have a lot of young players. And I think they finally have their deep pairs figured out. D'Angelo's a local kid. I always push for him. He's having a great year. He really is. He could get 50 points this year. And for what they're paying him, it's unbelievable. So this could be a really banner year for him. Mark Stahl's not playing much. And ever since he's not playing, they're playing better defensively. Ryan Lindgren is a guy who I was high on. They picked up in the trade. I had known him from NTDP a long time ago and then college. And he's a good player, good rugged guy who will stick up for teammates but plays good defense, can get a few points here and there. And Adam Fox has just been tremendous. Like, Adam Fox rarely does anything wrong. He's calm, smart, everything you want. He adds offense. He's a very cool customer, very chill is the best way for me to describe him because I've interviewed him a lot. And so that's all helped him. Panarin obviously didn't fold in a big market, which I didn't think he would.
Nah.
But I always tell people, with the Rangers and Leafs, anytime they make a big deal like that, like a Tavares, like a Panarin, and they sign players like that, there's always this, well, they're going to be lousy there. They're not going to, and it's like, stop. How often does that really happen? Once in a while it happens. There's no question. But it wasn't going to happen with these guys. Part of the Rangers being up and down lately was Zibanejad was out. He's a big cog in this team. He's their number one center, obviously, but he's also their number one trigger on the power play. With that shot, that's a big deal. So, now he's back. That helps. Capo Keiko's doing okay. He hasn't done great in tight quarters. He's still not totally used to that. When he has room, like when they give him a stretch pass or if it's 3-on-3 overtime, then you could really see his magic. But he's had trouble creating in 5-on-5. And so I think that's something where that could be later in the year. So right now, even though I did pick the Rangers as a playoff team, I did it because of the goalie tandem and what I felt like their offense could be. And I still think we're maybe looking at January or February till we see what their offense could be, based on the fact that they have young players, Howden, there's so many of them, Hedel, so many of them that they're starting to show progress, but they haven't put it all together. Now, they had put up like points in 5 straight games. They were losing 2-0 last I saw to Vegas, which that probably is a game they're going to drop. So if that happens, then there's still that question. So they're much better off than the Devils, though. No question about that.
Yeah, the Devils are getting waxed by the Sabres 5-0 end of the first period. I mean, that's fire.
Here's what I'm going to say. I'll go one step further and say it really does seem like they've given up on this coach, the players. It really does. Players could say things otherwise. If you interview them, they would. If I interviewed them, they would tell me no. I get it, but their play on the ice is telling me.
Well, we've seen it around here, that's for sure. And look, 5-0, you're getting waxed like that. Something has to happen after this game.
We say that, but I don't know.
It's like the Toronto game last year when Hextall calls up Goulbourne when they get destroyed. But, yeah, I just...
Remember, Josh Harris didn't make any quick moves with the Sixers, so I don't know.
Yeah, but they went out and got PK. They got Wayne Simmons, and they wanted to, and they wanted to see if these moves would push them to help them, sign Taylor Hall. And now Taylor Hall.
All right, but how about this? All right.
Yeah.
Everybody in the audience, raise your hand if you thought Wayne Simmons was going to have a great year.
No.
Okay, I didn't think so.
No, he's joined Ryan Clough in what I was and what I am now are two different. One of these things is not like the other.
And he's a great guy. I love Wade Simmons.
The best.
He plays tough. He'll stick up for his teammates. The offense and the legs aren't what they used to be. We knew there would be a day for Wayne Simmons to sort of run low because of the way he played.
Yeah.
And that day has occurred. Now, PK Subban, I thought he had a little more on there. The fact that he doesn't is part of what's killing them because he's not even doing a lot for them on the power play, which you would have thought their power play would have been better. Now, Hughes is out right now, but Hughes has done okay. He hasn't been super great, but I knew there'd be an adjustment for him, but he hasn't been bad either. But Subban should have been that guy driving that power play, and he's really not.
No.
So all those things, the goaltending, they finally moved out Schneider. There's so much. There's just so much. And
Blackwood's not ready. He's just, not in front of this team anyway.
He's close, yeah.
Yeah.
The team in front of him, if they were better, he would look better.
Yeah.
He would, because he's a really good physical goalie. And so if the defense were stronger, but they're going to lose Hall, they're going to lose Vatanen. I don't know. I think you should change the coach just so these players can start playing better now, so you have some momentum going into next year, regardless of where you end up in the draft. I still think they're going to be 4 or 5 from the bottom, even at the best. But isn't it better if some of those guys are playing better? If they just run this season out with John Hines, yes, they'll end up in the top 3 in draft picks probably, but I don't know. Then next year, you've got a real project on your hands. So I'm not sure that's where they wanted to be and envisioned to be. But this is 2 bad off seasons for this team.
Yeah, absolutely. Hey, did the Rangers have one of the best under the radar trading chips with their backup goaltender,
Yes.
Georgiev? Because
Yeah.
Shesterkin's really kicking some butt right now in
is.
the AHL, and to me, that's like the Rangers' best hope of getting an improvement, because Georgiev could be like a really hot commodity.
He could be a hot commodity at the deadline. I believe he will be, because I think they'd like to bring up Shesterkin at that time. He's doing great. I didn't think he would do anything but great, to be honest. He's just one of those guys. I think he's a little bit better than Sorokin, but he's another one. When Sorokin comes over next year, he's gonna show some people that he can play too. Some of these Russian goalies now are just, they've sort of supplanted the Finns as the best Euro hot goalie market, right? The Finns owned that for a while, and then it sort of has tailed off, and the Russians have really picked up in that category. And
Yeah.
Askarov is another one who's going to go top 15 in this draft. And I just posted something on Sportsology because he got his first win in the KHL already. So think about the potential there. So, yeah, I do think Georgiev is a guy that they will look to move, and maybe he's a part of a deal, maybe he's a part of a bigger deal, but I do think that does give them some currency, and if they're sort of in striking distance, that could help them.
Yep, absolutely. Hey, Russ, last kind of series for me, in terms of turning it back to the Flyers, any observations you have on Isaac Ratcliffe, some of his struggles? It seems normal to me, a guy his size, his experience and skill level, to maybe not be quite ready for prime time. He hasn't really looked that great at the AHL level, but it's coming along, it seems.
Yeah, I just saw him like a week and a half ago, 2 weeks ago. I did just put in a report to one of the websites I write for that, his skating is choppy at that level. So he's like, to me, like an average skater down there right now. So while he looked good in rookie camp, now, you compress the talent level in the AHL, which is good. And so he's an average skater. I think his passing's good. I just think it's something where he's working on that. It could be more accurate, and I think that'll come around. I think his overall play is pretty good. But again, he is a bigger guy. So for people that, thought he would have a quick entrance into the NHL, it's rare that guys his size do. You go look at Nick Ritchie, there's so many to look at. So I still like the track he's on, but I think he's on a longer track, and that's okay.
Yeah. And you talked about Adam Fox. What was the adjective? He was smooth or...
Smooth, calm. Very smooth and calm. A calm defenseman, yes.
Isn't that a very good way to describe what Cam York looks like at this stage of the game as well?
Yeah, but knowing that he got banged up a little this year, I'm sort of... And I'm going to wait until the end of the season to see how he finishes out. But I'm sort of in the camp like... Well, Quinn Hughes waited 2 years. He went 2 years in Michigan. It might be good for Cam York to go 2 years there, too. Keep building himself up.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
Keep doing all of that. Because you look at the Quinn Hughes now, and he's really good, although when they were in town here, he had a shaky game. And so even a guy as good as Quinn Hughes is still going to have some of those at his young age. But, no, I'm a big Cam York fan. There's a thing lately... I saw Bill Meltzer have to answer to this, and then I tweeted around it about people saying that he had like no power behind his shot. Well, again, I go back to Shane Gostisbehere and Ivan Provorov, and Ivan Provorov's got a shot that absolutely gets to the net. It's not the fastest, it's not the prettiest, but it gets there. And that's what Cam York does. It gets there. And I don't care. It's a fast release, just get it there. That's 3/4 of what you need to do in the NHL. Who cares how hard it is or how great it looks? End of the day, that's nice if that's all working. But if it's, if I have to choose between the two, I'm still going to take the most accurate. I mean, that's the biggest thing. And look, I probably watched Provorov more than anybody in this area. Well, I know I have because I I saw him in the USHL years ago.
Right.
And this is before he even went to the WHL, and wrote about him still on Sportsology, actually, that write-up. And those are some of the things that helped him get here, is just sort of keeping it simple that way. And so, yeah, a defenseman that can do that, and York can definitely do that, that's to their advantage. You know, a lot of moving parts on a defenseman is not a great thing.
No, definitely not. And Cam Yorker's slight build, just like his calmness and his poise. And if he needs a little more time for development, I think the Flyers are in a position to, if he wants to get that extra year, I certainly wouldn't have a problem at all.
The big story towards the end of the year will be some of these college seniors. Tanner Lisinski, Wyatt Kaliniak, I think, is a senior.
Right.
To see if the Flyers will be able to sign these guys or not, or they're going to have to trade their rights. I think that'll be something we'll be watching for.
Yeah, I know they wanted to sign Lisinski and Allison for that. Did they sign Allison or not?
No, they did not. No,
they did
he's
not.
Playing in college, and that's because of his knee.
Right.
And so, if he could prove his knee's healthy, they'd sign him in a heartbeat, and I think he'd play for the Flyers in a heartbeat. I think they need to see where his knee at, but I just can't remember if Kaliniak's in his third year or fourth year. But either way, with the year he's having, he's going to want to sign, and if he has another year left in college and he goes back, if you haven't signed him, it'll be twice as hard to sign him. If he is, so that's where you're at with Kaliniak.
Well, they certainly need the depth of young players. Until York is available, there's a little bit of a gap.
Especially defensemen.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And Bobby Brink, have you had an opportunity to?
I haven't seen him this year, but I know he's doing well. I've seen the point total. I am going to make it a point to see him at some point, but he is looking good. He is another guy that's slight of build, so you do want Brink to build himself up. But no, Bobby Brink's he's going to be a good one. That still doesn't mean I wouldn't rather have Cole Caulfield than Cam York and Bobby Brink, but that's me.
No, I know.
I'm just saying.
I know.
I'm just saying. I still think it's good. The Flyers got two good players. That's good.
Yeah, but there's a case to be made that you add. I mean, you see what I'm not comparing Cole Caulfield to this guy, but you see what the impact of a guy like Pasternak.
Yeah.
It's just last night that shot reminded me of a Ginla or even Mike Bossy back in the day.
Yeah,
it's special. It's a game changer. That changed the whole game. So yeah. I see your point. And the last one, and he's hurt right now, but he does have a pro body. Ronnie Adder took him a while to get going. Then he got 4 goals, and I think an assist in 10 games, and he's currently out. But more of an offensive guy who has to learn a little bit more about how to play in his own zone.
Yeah, I think there's some of that. I mean, he definitely has physical aggression on his side, and he's got size. No question, he's got a great shot. So I do think there's an adjustment period for him. I do think he's going to take a couple of years in college and then the AHL, and then I think you'll see him. I don't think they ever thought they'd be able to get him to the NHL quicker because of his age. I just think they liked what they saw, and they said, all right, let's cultivate this and see where we can get this guy. Because, at the end of the day, with a guy with that kind of size, if you can get him there and he's got some offensive ability, you really have something. So I think it was well worth it.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. He was very high on your board, if I recall correctly.
He was.
Yeah. How is he as a skater?
Last I saw him, his skating is good. It's not great. And I imagine when he hit the college level, it's probably average.
Right.
So I thought it looked good in camp, but I do think, and in camp, everybody looks a little faster because, the 3 or 4 guys that stand out tend to stand out and sort of color your judgment a little bit. NCAA, they have a lot of good skaters in the NCAA. They just do. And so I think he's probably average right now in that level. And so give him a couple of years. They'll keep working with him on his skating. I don't think it'll be like a Matthew Strome situation. I don't.
No.
So,
Is any hope for Matt Strome? That skating is brutal.
I just think he's an AHLer. He's got all the other tools, but I just, I don't think he's going to be able to get over the hump skating-wise. It just happens sometimes. I mean, that's just, it's not a cliche to say that the league gets faster every year or every 2 years. And if you're already behind the 8 ball and you're trying just to be fast enough, that's where you have a problem closing.
Yeah, I could see that. Well, unless anybody else has some questions for Russ, I guess it's time to say, Russ, thanks so much for coming on the O&B Puckcast. You're in so many different places right now.
I am.
And let me see, the Hockey Buzzcast, Off the Post, your podcast, and then of course there's the Stick to Hockey with Jason Martinez.
Yeah.
We got to get him on here one time. And you're also at Elite Prospects. You write for them, and you're on regular on Sirius XM.
Yep, tomorrow at 12:30. Yep.
Yeah, and of course you're at Sportsology.
At sportsology.com, and also for a website called Featured. I've been writing prospect information for them, and another website called Go GTS. I do collectibles prospect information on different sports besides hockey.
Right.
Hockey, baseball, football.
Well, I know you're a big baseball guy, and that's it's a nice diversion. What a difference in the sports, right?
I know. Well, baseball and hockey are like my two real good sports now. Like the seasons don't overlap that much, so I can really focus on them. And when one, is sort of ending, the other one's sort of beginning, and then it works really well for me. And that also works well book-wise. I've got a college hockey book called Sticks and Stones coming out probably around May.
That's terrific. Yeah, look for that on Amazon.
Yep.
Yeah.
And people could still go to Amazon or DM me on Facebook if you want any of my other books, because for the holidays.
Yeah, I have was it the Pioneers of Baseball? Is that?
Pioneers of Baseball, yeah.
Yeah, I'd recommend that. It's a nice table book. It's a quick read. Yeah.
There's a lot of Philly guys in it, a lot of couple different profiles of Connie Mack as a player, as a manager, and an owner. So, yeah, but there's a lot of Philly and New York players in there, teams in there. And I did try and Chef would like this, I did talk about the food that was sort of at the ballparks in those days.
Oh, yeah.
It's a little different than now.
That's funny, like my dad was a kid. He'd been at all the stadiums. He went to Connie Mack as a kid.
Okay.
He was at the Vet, obviously. He took us there, and we'd sneak down from the 700 levels because the Phillies sunk then.
Yeah.
And then we take, now, with Citizens Bank, that's what he loves. I mean, he likes the Flyers, but his love is baseball. So we go as much as we can with him.
Yeah, I go to probably, I would say at least 4 games at Citizens Bank a year, 2 or 3 at Citi Field a year, right around that range.
Well, it's still a good time. I was fortunate enough. I was there the last night of Connie Mack.
Wow, that's great.
Yeah, I was 10 years old. So I'm so glad I made it the year before they closed that place down.
Yeah, that's a cool thing. I mean, I did go to a lot at the Vet, and I was there for their last game, one of their last games, not the final, but like one of their 2 or 3 final. I was actually there. People forget they had the first baseball game after 9/11. It was against the Braves.
Yeah, that's right. Larry Burrow was the manager.
And I was at that game. I don't know why I bought tickets for that game. It was probably, there was some sort of ticket deal going on. And I said, well, I could see the Braves and, they probably beat the Phillies and that would be okay with me, I guess, back then. It'd still be okay with me now, by the way. I don't know, with the Braves, I might hate the Braves more, but I was there for that game, and it was kind of like a scary moment, like you didn't know what to expect. And after a while, you just sort of got comfortable in there, and the fans were great. And so that's one that sort of always forgets to be mentioned. And it was a pretty big event because of that.
Yeah, you were looking over your shoulder every other minute around there.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Especially at a public place. So.
Oh, yeah.
So Russ, people can follow you on Twitter at Sportsology.
Yep.
And again, thanks so much for coming on. We'll have to do this again fairly soon.
Yeah, anytime, guys.
All right. Thanks so much. Okay. Well, that's some great information. It's always, with Russ, some terrific info. Yeah, Dan, any impressions about some of the things Russ said, or maybe some other things you wanted to bring to our attention before we call it a night?
No, I think he said a lot of the things that I was feeling, especially the Frost and Farabee keeping them up versus sending them down. We were talking about that on the Angry Negative show this past week, and I'm still watching a lot of Phantoms games going there, whenever they're in town. And, I've often wondered about that. I think they're keeping them up mainly because they don't have many other option choices right now. What are they going to do? Call up Vorobiev instead of Frost? I mean, the fan base would collectively lose it, but it is an interesting idea, interesting concept to see what they could do there, especially maybe come the trade deadline when they could seek more help for the defensive forward.
Yeah, it's a possibility, as we talked earlier with Russ. Maybe a prospect, a guy like Haig, could be part of a deal if the Flyers could get another defenseman. It's hard to say how that would all come together, but a lot of it depends on Frost and Farabee as well. I always think about what they are going to look like after a certain number of games, and there is that point at the season where these guys, the contract status, it gets them closer to I think arbitration or something like that. At that, I think he said it was a 32 game mark. Yeah, so the Flyers tomorrow night at home versus the Maple Leafs, the reinvigorated Maple Leafs, with Sheldon Keefe, the new coach, and of course all the wonderful stories that are coming out about Babcock and Babcock assistants, and I'm not even going to go there. That's a whole other show.
Just took out Crawford. Crawford got taken off the bench while we were doing the show. I saw that on Twitter.
Oh, Jesus.
He's off of the Blackhawks duties for as of right now. I don't think he's fired yet, but I haven't seen that. But they said that they're just
pending an investigation or something.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. Well, this is going to be hockey's version of Me Too. Just look out for the guys who tells you, go right to this lawyer. Then you know what you got going on there. So after Tuesday against the Leafs, Thursday, this is a nice little home spot here against the Arizona Coyotes. Then Saturday versus Ottawa, more than a couple days off. They go out west and the Midwest. Colorado, the 11th, Minnesota, the 14th is Saturday night, and next the Sunday right after that at Winnipeg. And Winnipeg's starting to play well again, as is Minnesota, and Colorado's maybe the third best team in the league after Boston and Washington. So, and then we'll come back and probably see you on the 16th. So with that, Chef, where can people find you on Twitter?
Chef the Left B on Twitter, and you can also find me Steam Pub in Southampton, 606 2nd Street Pike. Always cooking up something special, especially with the holidays going on now.
All right, fantastic, Chef. Thanks for your contribution tonight, and of course, Dan the Flyer fan. Give us your information so we can catch up with you at Brotherly Puck and Brotherly Pod and National Puck and National Pod.
Yeah, at Dan the Flyer fan, at Brotherly Puck, at Brotherly_Pod. I'll be Angry Negative Show on Wednesday with the potential name change in hand. So stay tuned for that one. We've got some breaking news on that show as far as the future of the Angry Negative Show goes. So stay tuned for that. And at National Podnet and at National Puck as well.
All right, terrific. I hope we didn't miss anything. I always get crazy. I wanted to say this. I wanted to give you this stat or what have you, but I think we're good for tonight, especially with Russ's information. So that's the O&B Puckcast for the night. Until next time, everybody, take care.